I used to have this job where I planted trees. I've planted 7,176 trees in my lifetime. It was my job, it's what I did. It was very hard work, but I enjoyed it. My boss used to say that he needed people with strong backs and weak minds, and sadly I qualified for that. I would keep track of how many trees I planted and where a lot of them were. I would plant some trees that would be back off on somebody's property where I could never see them again, and there were other trees that I would refer to as high-profile plantings that would be out on a street, maybe on a courthouse. So as the number grew and my 5,000th tree was approaching, I wanted to plant it somewhere where I could always come visit it, a high-profile place. So I arranged with the proper authorities to be able to plant it at my local park. This is in the neighborhood where I lived for 20 years, so I'd always be able to come back and see my 5,000th tree. And as the day approached, it was in May, maybe 15 years ago, had a few friends out, we had a little fun ceremony, and I planted the tree. So fast forward many, many years later, and this is the tree. This is the 5,000th tree I planted. This is a tulip poplar. It's a Liriodendron tulipifera. It's the Indiana state tree, so it seemed like the appropriate one to plant here. It's probably been 13, 14, 15 years. I really don't remember. But when I planted it, it was about as big around as my wrist, right down here. But just imagine the difference in the size of my wrist now as to how big this thing is. The first time I came back here after moving to Nashville, I hadn't seen it for maybe 6 or 7 years. I came back to visit it and I just could not believe how big it had gotten. And it's much larger now. I'm not completely sure how to say this, but I never had children. I never wanted children. I never had kids. But my friends, and a lot of you watching this, have had kids and you've watched them grow up. And you can see time passing as they grow up in age, and you can see yourself aging. I never had that. So I still feel like that same 20-something-year-old kid, some knucklehead. But as I stand here next to this tree, I can see time passing and I can feel myself aging. I think, how is it possible that I planted something that's this big? I'm not old enough. So if I have any legacy in this world, these trees are probably it. These things will outlast me by a long time, and then they'll crumble into dust like the rest of us, and time will march on. I remember cleaning the gutters with my dad when I was a kid, and there were these maple keys that somehow sprouted, and we had little bitty maple trees growing in our gutter. And I remember my dad taking a couple of those out and planting them in the backyard. And I could still drive by that house that we lived in when I was a kid and see those maple trees, those big maple trees that my dad pulled out of a gutter and planted. And it's a legacy. It's part of my dad's legacy. There's an old saying that the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, and the second best time to plant a tree is today. I like the idea of that. This is a tulip poplar. It's Liriodendron tulipifera. It's the Indiana state tree, and I thought it'd be the perfect thing to plant here in this park. If the Indiana state tree can't thrive here, I'm not sure what can. Eagle Creek Nursery for all of your tree needs. Ask for Tom, tell him Otis sent you.